Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Curtis, and today I'm going to do a review for Beauty in Black Season 2, Episode 1. And before I get started, I do want to let you all know that I have a computer, right? But the camera quality is not really that good. So I'm actually recording this through my iPhone through Photo Booth. So if you see me looking over this way, I'm actually looking at my notes. And then when I look this way, of course, I'm looking at my phone. All right, so the episode begins with Kimmy, Rain, and Sylvia. They are inside of Horus's hospital room, and Horus is going through it. He is coughing up a storm. He's breathing funny. He's constantly closing his eyes real tight. So he's definitely going through it. And Kimmy's like, do you feel good? Are you okay? And he's like, no, I'm not okay. I mean, look at me. And then she's like, do you want me to go get a nurse, get a doctor? And he's like, no, there's no point because there isn't anything that they can do to help me out in this particular situation. He looks over at Kimmy and thanks her for bringing joy into his life. And she's like, joy, what are you talking about? And he's like, you know what? Even though the cancer is currently eating through my body, I am okay because my soul is happy. And the reason why my soul is happy is because of you. He asks Kimmy, did you see the look on their faces in regard to his family? She says yes. Rain chimes in and says, you know what, they actually look pretty devastated. He's like, good. He's like, the idea of being able to see the devastation in their faces makes him want to fight to live more. He says, you know what, I got those sons of bitches, all of them. And Rain is like, damn, are they really that bad? And he says, you have no idea. Rain looks over at Horace and says, do you think that Kimmy will be okay when it comes to the family? And he says, you know what, when it comes to my father's will, it has a pretty strict stipulation that says if anything happens to Kimmy, then they will not get their share. And Kimmy is like, you know what, that's cool and all, and I do appreciate it, but what about Sylvia and Rain? And he tells her not to worry about them. She's like, no, no, no. I want them to be protected as well. And not only do I want your word, I want you to also put it in writing because I can't just take your word at this time. And he's like, well, you know what? When it comes to my father's will, it cannot be changed, but my will can be changed. And what I will do is I will add protection for them. Horace inquires about Angel. Kimmy's like, you know what? He's good. And he's like, do you know where he's at? And she says, you know what? I'm not really sure. And he tells her that she needs to find out so that he can see him. And she's like, okay, cool. And then Kimmy, she decides to pivot and ask him about the comments that he made about her being the boss. She's like, what is this conversation about me being the boss? Like, I don't know anything about running a company. And he's like, you know what? That is okay because I will put people around you to make sure that you keep the company afloat. And she's like, I'm not really sure. It's like, don't worry about it. I'm going to make sure everything is straight. Horace tells Kimmy that she needs to head to the house. And she's like, huh? He says, yes, there's going to be a driver who's going to be waiting for you. He's going to take you to the house, and then I have a butler. The butler's going to allow you in. And speaking of the driver, it turns out that the driver actually works for Jules. And they're like, wait a minute, hold on for a second. Like, I'm not riding around with him if he works for Jules. And Horace is like, look, I checked him out. Everything is cool. He just got caught up in some shit. But listen, when it comes to this type of business or dealing with these kind of people, you can't trust anybody, which is true. And he says it's not about who you can trust, it's about who can give you the most leverage. And right now, it appears that it is him. And speaking of Jules, he, Norman, Varney, Roy, Charles, Olivia, and Mallory, they are in the hospital lobby and they are pissed. Olivia's like, who is that hoe? And I thought that was so funny. Mallory asks Jules, aka Otis from the Temptations, if he knows who she is. He tells her that he thinks that it will be better to discuss it at her house. Varney says, you know what, I agree. And so then Roy looks over at him and says, you know what, I don't want you to be at my house because how can you even let this happen? And he says, I didn't even know that anything was happening. And then Roy's like, you know what, that's some bullshit. And then Mallory interjects and tells Roy that he did not know. And then Charles chimes in and he says to the group, you know what, he did not know, but then he slips up and says, he actually tried to warn me. And I was like, oh man. Olivia's like, how can you say that he did not know what was going on, but at the same time say that he tried to warn you? And so Varney is like, you know what, I did kind of know a little bit, but I did not know that it was going to be all of this. He says that, you know what, I actually found out this morning. I didn't really know anything about it. And Roy's still looking at him like, if you say so, brother. And then after this, Roy brings up the fact that Horace called Kimmy the boss. And so Varney says, you know what, number one, she is his wife. And then number two, he is allowed to put whoever he wants in that position. Rain comes downstairs into the lobby area, and this is a very awkward exchange between her and Jules. Olivia's like, do you two know each other? And she says, yeah, we go way back. And he's like, yeah. And since we go back, you should remember everything that happened back in the day when you attempt to raise your tone. And she's like, whatever, where is Alex? And then Alex is like, here I am. And she says, come with me. And Roy is like, hold on, wait, that's my driver. Like, Alex is my driver. And she says, well, you need to find a new one. Jules chimes in and says, hey, Alex actually works for me. And so she actually counters this and she's like, well, technically speaking, you now work for Kimmy, right? So if you work for Kimmy, doesn't that mean that Alex now works for Kimmy? And speaking of Kimmy, her and her sister actually come downstairs. And Jules is like, Kimmy, what's up? Kimmy corrects him. She's like, listen, my name is not Kimmy. My name is Mrs. Bellery. Mallory decides to walk up to Kimmy and introduce herself. And Kimmy's like, I already know who you are. And then Charles is like, I remember you from somewhere. Where do I remember you? And then he's like, oh, right, you're a stripper. And she says, yes, and I remember you too. You were doing drugs in the bathroom with a male stripper. And he was like, oh, shit, she is quick. And then she looks over at Varney and says, you know what, Horace actually wants to speak with you. After this exchange, we see Mallory and Roy, they're in the car, and they get into an argument about a what if. And so it's basically like, what if Mallory was not married to Roy? And she's like, if I was not married to you, I'll be on a yacht with the billionaire. So he actually takes his ring off and is like, you know what? I give you permission to do what you want if you were so bad. Mallory decides to pivot and brings up the fact that Jules had him and his father fucking the same bitch that works at the strip club. She tells him that she wants to know everything that happened. He tells her he's not going to tell her shit. And she tells him that she's going to find out. He's like, okay, and do what the fuck it is you need to do. He's like, I'm sick of you making all of these threats. Mallory decides to pivot again, and she brings up the fact that she is going to have to look at Kimmy every single day because she is sure that she's going to be in Horace's office, which is right across from her. And Roy's like, I swear to God, if she sits in that office, I will throw her out the window. And then Mallory's like, well, you can't do that because if something happens to her, we will not get access to her shares, remember? And he's just like, fuck. Varney finally makes it up to the hospital room, and Horace is like, look, I need you to add a couple of people to my will. So Sylvia, Rand, and Angel, I need you to add them and basically make them like family members so that way they can be protected from the others. And he says that I need it to be airtight and also need it to be done today. And then he goes on to say that when it comes to Varney, he wants her to tell Kimmy everything. And then Kimmy's like, well, how will I know if he's telling me everything? And this actually pisses Horace off. And he's like, you know what, Varney, I need you to step away real quick. I need to talk to her. He looks over at Kimmy in disgust and he's like, listen, haven't we had a conversation about you asking me these questions in front of other people? Like, what is wrong with you? Remember, you can't trust nobody. And she starts to get emotional. He's like, look, I do not have time to be worried about your feelings because, to be honest, I don't even have that much time on this earth. Like, get it together. It's during this conversation that he reveals that he has other lawyers and advisors at other firms. And so whenever he talks to Varney, he also doubles and triple checks with other lawyers just to make sure that everything he is saying is true. And going forward, he actually wants her to do the same thing. So whenever she actually has a conversation with him and she's not really sure if he's telling her all the information, she can go to the other lawyers just to verify the details. It appears that the conversation is over, but she's like, wait, I actually have one more thing to say. And he's like, oh my God, what now? She tells him that she stole a car, and it turned out that a man who was the father-in-law to a guy named Daniel Lakeland was in the back seat. She goes on to say that Angel went to the parking garage to check on the car, and Horace says, you know what, don't worry about it, I'll take care of everything. We then flash over to Rain and she is officially discharged. Kimmy comes in and she's like, you know what, how do you feel about Alex? Like, are you sure about him? I mean, he works with Jules, like, what do you think? And she's like, I mean, it is what it is at this point. Like, we are already in it, so I mean, it can't be too bad. Besides, Horace, he seems like he's trustworthy, so if he's vouching for him, I mean, what's the problem? Kimmy tells her, you know what, I'm not really sure, and she's like, girl, Horace married you and didn't make you sign a prenup. Like, he seems pretty trustworthy and legit to me. And she's like, I mean, I'm not really sure. Like, I mean, is this marriage even legit? Like, do we even know if it's legit? And she's like, you know what? You just need to go with it. And she's like, I can't really go with it until I know that you and my sister are straight. And Ray's like, listen, I believe what he says. And she's like, why do you believe him so much? Like, you don't even know him. And she's like, look, I'm not even about to get into it with you. All I know is that he has a mansion, he has horses, he has money, and that's all I really care about at this point. The ladies, they go outside, they get into a car, and they're being taken to Horace's house. And Kimmy asks Alex, you know, how long have you been working for Jules? And he's like, I do not work for Jules. I work for the city of Chicago as a cop. And she's like, okay, let me ask you again. How long have you been working for Jules? And this time he says, I do not work for Jules. I work for the Bellery family. Kimmy's like, you know what? You do know I know you, right? I remember seeing you and another cop at Dorinda's. And he's like, yeah, well, if you saw me, you may have overheard me say that I understand why you did what you did, and I don't blame you for it. Rain decides to circle back to Dorinda's and inquires, and mind you, they are essentially using air quotes in this moment. And she's like, what happened to Body? Alex says that Body is in the hospital. And Kimmy's like, wait, Body is alive? And Sylvia, Poor Sylvia, she has no idea what's going on. She's like, what is going on? Because they're also referencing chairs. And she's like, what are you all talking about? What's going on? And I was just like, y'all, please get her up to date. And then Rain says, you know what? Since she is in the hospital, we may need to, pay her a visit. And Kimmy was like, no, we're not going to pay her a visit. She was like, I don't know. I think we need to do that. She was like, no, we're not going to do that. Rain asks Alex, do you know Daga? He's like, no, I do not know her, but if you need me to, I can find out who she is and I can get to know her. She's like, yeah, do that. Mallory, Roy, Charles, Olivia, Norman, Varney, and Jules, they meet at Mallory and Roy's house. Varney tells him that Horus wants to add Sylvia, Rain, and some person named Angel to the wheel. Charles is like, Angel. How do I know Angel? Oh, he works at the club with Kimmy. Y'all, during this scene, there were a couple of quick back and forths that I thought was funny. Like when Norman and Charles were going back and forth, I thought that was funny. And then with Mallory and Olivia, I was cracking up. I was like, this old dysfunctional ass family. Roy tells him that, you know what, he does not want Varney there. And Olivia's like, if you don't shut the fuck up. And that actually reminded me of, y'all remember in the movie Poetic Justice when Jennifer Lewis played Tupac's mom and he was talking about smoking a cigarette? She told him to shut the fuck up. It actually reminded me of that. Mallory asks Varney, is there anything that they can do legally to prevent this from happening? He says no. And then Varney reveals that Horus actually protected his shares, but he actually diluted 10% from each of them. And they were like, what the fuck? And so Norman says he wants to know everything about Kimmy, and he wants to know now, and y'all, Norman was pissed. After all of this, there was a quick scene between Jules, Roy, Mallory, and to be honest, I do not really feel like it added any substance. It was pretty much about Jules trying to get a new girl for Roy, which I was like, okay, I guess. But there really wasn't anything special about it, so I'm just going to go to the next scene. Speaking of Jules, he is out driving when he receives a call from Officer Traxon, who tells him that Angel was arrested for stealing the car that Kimmy was talking about a little bit earlier. And then Jules says, you know what, keep him there. And I was just like, Jules, he's in jail, brother. He's not going nowhere. The fuck? There was a quick scene after this in which Mallory reached out to Felicia to try to get some information about Kimmy. And the only thing that I really took away from the scene was that Mallory said, and I thought this was funny, she says that she bets that Felicia's throat is always sore and that she always has to visit the clinic every time that she makes money. And I was just like, damn, that's cool. But it's funny. After this, we see Charles. He's at his house. He goes into the kitchen and he's about to pour himself something to drink. And then next thing you know, Varney walks in. Charles says, you know what, I love how you walk in here as if you live here. And he's like, you know what, if you don't start taking this shit seriously, you won't be living here. Varney reiterates the fact that your shares were diluted by 10%, which means that you have lost $8 million. And I was like, $8 million? And so I could see why Norman and Olivia, they were pissed. And so the two of them, they continue to talk. And then Charles is like, you know what? I don't feel like dealing with this. I really just want to fuck. And he's like, do you realize that your father is in the hospital? Do you realize what's going on? Are you taking it seriously? He's like, listen, I understand what's going on. I know my father's in the hospital, but right now I'm trying to fuck. And he's like, this is terrible. You don't take anything serious. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to be in the room. If you want to fuck, you could come in there. And then he walks away. And then Varney's just like, why do I keep falling for this shit? And it looks like, he's going to be like, you know what? I'm not dealing with this. But of course he gives in and then he walks into the room. The two of them end up fucking of course. And Varney's like, you know what? I love you. And so this actually turns Charles off a little bit. And so Varney's like, will I ever be enough for you? And do you know he actually said no? And I said, wow, I know he was hurt. Varney gets upset. He gets into his feelings. He's like, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not dealing with this. So he actually gets up. He puts his clothes on. And he ends up rushing out of the room. And then all of a sudden, he just stops. So we're like, what's going on? Like, why did he stop? And then Karen pans around and we see Roy. So clearly, Roy, he either heard the conversation, he heard them fucking, or he heard them fucking and heard the conversation. Either way it goes, he heard something. Alright, so that is the end of the episode. What did you all think? I actually thought it was pretty good. I thought it was solid. I feel like it's much better than some of the other Tyler Perry shows that I've seen. But in regards to the different camera angles, just to reiterate, so I have a new computer. It's facing this direction. This is where my notes are. This is my phone. I'm going to get a stand so I can try to get it set up properly. So that way I'm not, looking this way when the phone is over here. Just to make it like a better viewing experience. But I hope you all did enjoy the review. If you could, please like, comment, share, subscribe. That would be great. Hope you have a great rest of your day.